Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. It's interesting what the Bible has to say about pride. Pride is not a good thing in the Bible. Pride is more selfishness. Pride is self-serving. Pride is bad because it oftentimes leads us in areas that we shouldn't go. And it leads us with a confidence that we probably shouldn't have. So it's interesting that the LGBTQIA2 plus whatever group and has claimed a couple things as their own. And they've claimed the word pride, and they've claimed the rainbow. And to my mom's chagrin, my 80-something mom has a birthday in June. They have claimed June as Pride Month. Well, the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, said on Tuesday that there are, quote, no plans for a Pride Month proclamation. Yeah, asked about any potential presidential proclamations coming down the pipeline during what many on the left celebrate as Pride Month, Leavitt said during a White House press briefing that the administration had no plans, adding that President Donald Trump is proud to be a president for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, and creed. Well, Leavitt made the comments after the Education Department declared June to be Title IX month. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And that's regarding the 53rd anniversary of the legislation that protects Americans from sex-based discrimination in education. Well, the Trump White House is doing a complete 180 from the Biden administration's focus on LGBT issues. While Trump celebrated Pride Month with a tweet in 2019, he never issued a presidential proclamation for the LGBT festivities. Well, President Joe Biden, meanwhile, took the Pride Month celebration to a completely new level, releasing proclamations each year he was in office and hosting LGBT activists and social media personalities at the White House. During a Pride Month party on the White House lawn in 2023, transgender activist named Rose Montoya, a man who identifies as a woman, met with Biden at the party before appearing topless on video with his hands covering his breast implants. The Biden administration later called the act inappropriate and disrespectful, and Montoya apologized. Well, throughout his presidency, Biden pushed radical policies on LGBTQ issues, especially regarding children. And in 2022, Biden signed an executive order to expand adults and children's access to radical gender procedures while condemning Republican-led states for clamping down on those same procedures on minors. In 2024, just a few months before the election, and as public opinion on the issue shifted, the Biden administration came out in opposition to gender surgeries on children. And in his first 4 months in office, Trump has taken a sledgehammer to the most radical part of the LGBT movement, pushing to protect children from life-altering gender procedures and prevent men from competing in women's sports, well, at least on a federal level. Quote, the erasure of sex in language and policy as a coercive impact, not just on women, but on the validity of the entire American system, basing federal policy on truth is critical to scientific inquiry, public safety, morale, and trust in government itself. That's what the White House wrote in Trump's order titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology, Extremism, and Restoring Biological Truth to the Federal Government. Well, I thought this when I told you that we would cover the Title IX thing, and the Daily Wire also in a series of articles came up with this as well. It said President Donald Trump's Education Department has declared June Title IX month in recognition of the 53rd anniversary of the historic legislation passage. The department will spend June highlighting the Trump administration's actions taken to protect female sports and spaces, as well as reversing the weaponization of Title IX that took place during the previous administration. The festivities after a stark contrast, they offer a stark contrast to the Biden Education Department's Pride Month celebrations, which focused on gender ideology, critical race theory, and DEI in a big way, I might add. The Educational Department's Office for Civil Rights is launching probes into high-profile cases that developed under the previous administration, one in Colorado and the other in Wyoming. In the first case, the Education Department will investigate the University of Wyoming for allowing a male into a Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority chapter and letting him live in female-only campus housing, prompting members of the sorority to sue the school, of course. The lawsuit describes how the male student would allegedly watch with a visible erection as female students changed or walked through the sorority house in their towels. And in the second case, Colorado's Jefferson County Public Schools is under investigation for assigning students to share overnight accommodations, quote, with other students that share a student's gender identity, unquote. Well, the Daily Signal previously reported that the school system assigned a young girl to share a bed with a trans-identifying boy on an overnight school trip. And she likely would have been pressured into sharing his bed had her mother not been present on that trip. In a press release, the Education Department notes that Jefferson County Public Schools allegedly misleads parents by informing them that girls and boys will be separated for overnight accommodations, without divulging, of course, that its definition of girl includes boys who claim a female identity. Well, Education Secretary Linda McMahon and Trump have been very open about their plan to hand over control of students' education to both states and parents, and ultimately eliminate the Department of Education. And since Trump returned to office, the Education Department has opened investigations into California and Maine for alleged violations of the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, which orders states to comply with parental rights laws, boosting school choice programs, and more even. But I thought that Matt Walsh, he did a great job in his opinion piece where he talks about the fact that Pride Month support is really on the outs. It's kind of going downhill. He says, as we predicted a while back, the most irrelevant and low energy Pride Month in the history of Pride Months is officially underway as of June 1st. The LGBT movement is currently coming to terms with the reality that after years of browbeating everybody into tolerating and then applauding and then participating in disorder and dysfunction, people are simply too disgusted and annoyed to put up with it anymore. The signs are all over the place. The city of Boise, far left stronghold in a otherwise very conservative state, just canceled its Pride Month kickoff due to insufficient attendance, as they put it. This is the same city that proudly named the so-called Pride flag as an official government flag just a few weeks ago, when the mayor claimed that the city is solidly behind the gay agenda. Well, turns out he might have overstated the case a bit there. And meanwhile, major corporation sponsors like Meta Anheuser-Busch and Comcast have fled San Francisco's Pride Parade. And reportedly, 1/4 of corporate donors to New York City's Pride events, including virtually all of the biggest donors, have either eliminated or greatly reduced their contributions this year. Something called Heritage of Pride, which organizes Pride events in New York, says they're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars this year. The future of the organization is now in jeopardy. And it's the same situation in Canada, if you can believe it. Google and Home Depot, along with Nissan, Adidas, and Clorox, have pulled out of the Toronto Pride Parade, leaving organizers to speculate about whether the event will even be able to take place in the future.
Those no's
in fact,
and the
listen to
doors
this.
Closed in your face because of the current climate.
As Pride season in the U.S. enters its peak this summer, with World Pride slated to take place in our nation's capital June 7th, LGBTQ organizations across the country are reporting substantial cuts in funding, stemming from corporations pulling their support away from sponsoring Pride events. Organizers say it's a direct result from many corporations ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in alignment with Trump administration policies.
From last year to this year, it's like a total 180.
Jameer Batiste is with Stonewall Pride Wilton Manors, which will celebrate its 25th year, June 14th. Batiste says the event has seen about a 20% decline in corporate support.
We can't go back into the closet.
Bruce Horwich with Miami Beach Pride, which just took place back in April, says it too saw a significant cut in funding from corporations and international visitors.
Progress is made slowly. It's unfortunately right now, it's not 2 steps back or 3 steps back. It's probably about 10 steps back.
It's why organizers are calling on the community and its allies.
Show up.
Don't be deterred.
Yeah, so they'll blame the Trump administration for cutting funding. They'll demand that the community send them more money, but under no circumstances will they change their behavior, right? Well, they won't stop twerking in front of children or engaging in sex acts in public or glorifying the chemical castration of children. They won't do any of that because they're fundamentally narcissistic. And that's what the whole movement is really about, which is why it's called Pride in the first place. But millions of Americans are very aware of what the so-called LGBT Pride movement actually stands for at this point. And that's why if you walk into your local department store, you'll probably see similar indications that the downfall of Pride is upon us. A woman named Caitlin Francis just uploaded 2 photos showing a side-by-side comparison of a Southern California Target store. One has rainbow stuff everywhere, and then the other has USA clothing and flags. Well, the image of the rainbow stuff is from June 1st of last year, and the image of the USA stuff is from June 1st of this year. It's the exact same spot in the store, but entirely different. They've replaced the LGBT colors and the shirts saying trans people will always exist with clothing that reasonable people would actually wear. They've got American flag shirts instead of LGBT propaganda now. It's almost as if Target, like every other corporation, has realized that normal people vastly outnumber the far left activists they've been pandering to. Indeed, with each passing year, Americans are increasingly aware of what the LGBT agenda actually is and what it entails. They're realizing that all of the promises of the so-called gay rights movement have actually been fraudulent all along. The facade is crumbling, and it's crumbling very quickly. In fact, if you look at a Gallup poll, support among Republicans for gay marriage has plummeted in the last 3 years, according to a new Gallup poll. Gallup's poll released on Thursday of last week found 41% of GOP voters support gay marriage, as opposed to 55% in 2021 and 2022. A whopping 88% of Democrats approved of gay marriage in the new poll. And the 47-point gap between the two parties is the largest since Gallup first asked the question in 1996. 76% of independents approved of gay marriage. And in 1996, 16% of Republicans approved. 33 of Democrats and 32 of independents agreed. So quite the shift there, and it's creating a big chasm, isn't it? 86% of Democrats said gay or lesbian relations are morally acceptable. I don't know where you're going to get that from. It's certainly not the Bible. But 38% of Republicans agreed. But that is a drop from 2022, when 56% of Republicans agreed. So among those who attend religious services at least once a week, 33% said same-sex marriage was morally acceptable, and 24% said gay lesbian relations were socially acceptable. A Gallup polling between 2020 and 2023 found that more Republicans attended weekly religious services than Democrats by 15 percentage points. And when writing a concurring opinion in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the case that overturned Roe versus Wade, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas made a legal case for overturning Griswold versus Connecticut, Lawrence versus Texas, and Oberfeld versus Hodges, the last of which guaranteed the right to gay marriage. And Thomas explained that the three cases relied on substantive due process, which he called an oxymoron that lacks any basis in the Constitution. Courts have used substantive due process to protect unenumerated rights not mentioned in the Constitution. So basically, they take the Constitution, they don't see anything in there that supports what they want, and so they just say, well, it's unenumerated rights. It's not spelled out in the Constitution, but if you take everything here and there, and we can try to come up with something. Well, the right to privacy and the right to gay marriage have been reorganized under substantive due process. And this is the quote. It says, quote, on the due process clause, Justice Thomas has long argued, consistent with much academic commentary, that insofar as the 14th Amendment incorporates innumerable rights against the states and protects innumerable rights, this work is done by the privileges and immunity clause and not the due process clause. And it says, in fact, in future cases, we should consider all of this court's substantive due process precedents, including Griswold, Lawrence, and Oberfeld, is what Thomas wrote. And he also said, because any substantive due process decision is demonstrably erroneous, and we have a duty to correct the error established in those precedences. After overruling these demonstrably erroneous decisions, the question would remain whether other constitutional provisions guarantee the myriad rights that our substantive due process cases have generated. So, I mean, obviously he wants to try to do away with this kind of stuff. And that's good. I mean, you know, obviously he's my favorite Supreme Court justice, but anyway, I would love to see him as Chief Justice, but that's another podcast, right? So, you know, here's another article that I thought really summed up some of what we're seeing here. And this comes from Sean Fitzpatrick, and he writes for Crisis Magazine, and he serves on the faculty of Gregory the Great Academy. It's a Catholic boarding school for boys in Pennsylvania. And he says that June is upon us, And the rainbows are out full force, but could it be with a diminishing force? Unilaterally appropriated as Pride Month, the beginning of summer comes with the unfurling of the rainbow flag in neighborhood stores and internet ads, because anything less at this point would be branded as homophobic censorship. Yeah, true enough, right? Get in line, fly the flag, cry love is love, or get torn down. But what happens when the untainted and unafraid refuse to fly the flag or bend the knee? When push comes to shove, the rainbow flag is meaningless and proclaims a fidelity as fleeting as the rainbow that vanishes as quickly as it appears. How cruel it is to compare that thing of beauty to such ugliness, but the time may be coming when people will be brave enough to see it and say it and stop the moronic LGBTQIA2 plus whatever lip service. They say that woke allegiances is a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning that though it's pervasive, it's not as firm as it seems. This latter point is probably in some ways true and not true. It is not true in the sense that the origins of what we call woke have roots that run very deep. As the liberal lifestyle and ideologies have a long-standing history of divorcing themselves from natural law and traditional values. But it is true in the sense that society is a fickle thing that is moved by fear and popularity and power and will march to the beat de jour if only for the sake of obtaining financial security and political sway. For this reason alone, the rainbow flag shouldn't be flown. It is ridiculous in the haphazard, frantic fashion that we see, because no one really means what they say by it. They just don't. And the demonstrations of Pride Month are beneath the dignity of those who wave it, and even those for whom it is waved. No one will die on the hill of gay pride or gay rights. It is too individualistic a cause to motivate martyrdom. The rainbow flag is no more than a gesture of safety and self-righteousness and self-indulgence, self-service, and allegiance to the powers that wish to promote the false idea of freedom as being limitless choice, unrestricted by external norms of authorities. No one has that much loyalty to a movement that is against the normal course of nature and reason. No one has that much dedication in a relativist, unconformist culture. The rainbow flag is a lie, plain and simple. And it shouldn't be tolerated either on the conservative Christian side or the liberal secular side. It is pandering. It is patronizing. It is grooming. It is a false front for a trendy and treacherous movement. And it is not about love at all, unless it is love of self. For loving acceptance lies not in a loving acceptance of lies. And marginal though it may seem, and may be, there are stirrings of resistance to the agenda behind the rainbow. The mega retailer Target has featured LGBTQ plus theme merchandise in June, including this year's tuck-friendly women's bathing suits for men, in adult children's sizes, by the way. But this year, thanks to a loud backlash and boycotting from conservative groups and customers, Target swept those products from their shelves. Though the corporation describes their capitulation to the safety of its employees from rabid right-wing extremists, the bottom line is that the dollar is still almighty. How about the Bud Light and Nike fiascos in featuring the transgender activist Dylan Mulvaney, our other high profile big business instances of proclaimed support for madness and then backing right away when confronted with the same people who are determined to debase their brand and damage their profile margins. Presidential candidates and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has also shown that Floridians are ready to take a stand against the sexual psychos of the day with the "Don't Say Gay" bill. Wasn't entitled that, but everybody knows it as that. And of course, his staunch political war against the indoctrinations of Disney. Meanwhile, the Los Angeles Dodgers have been flip-flopping with the drag queen invasions due to the loud objection by ordinary, honest Americans. And despite the rainbows that plaster our neighborhoods, there are still plenty who object and who are growing more and more ready to do so with both words and wallets. This awakening to the woke has been some time in coming. The liberal left has been legitimizing a wide range of disorders and subcultures where eventually the contradictions created by the criteria will head to absurdity. This is the logical conclusion when logic is abandoned. And there is only so much absurdity that the common man with his common sense will tolerate. The experiment in liberty has degraded into liberalism, and people are starting to notice. Even people on the left. Speaking on the ongoing crisis of sexuality, Jordan Peterson has pointed out that it has only been a handful of decades since the dawn of reliable birth control, and the effects have not had enough time to fully manifest the results of this dramatic society change. But while we may not yet have clear answers, we certainly do have clear questions in the broken families, scarred children, and unfulfilled youth, such as whether the proposed freedoms of love being love is actually healthy or even human. And love is far more complicated than the sexual revolution gave it credit for. The current state of unbridled sexual affairs is the result of years of sexual permissiveness and promiscuity. And it has infiltrated a whole generation with profound confusion. People who have lost the guiding principles of the traditional rules of marriage and monogamy and procreation. These days, everything, it seems, on the table when it comes to sex. But when someone gets offended, as they invariably will, the offender gets, mistletoe or hate speech into oblivion, and people suddenly grope for hard rules about consent and diversity, which is ironic since the watchword a movement but before was "you do you." Well, sex, gender, and sexuality are all sacred and solid things, and the radical left is running up against solid objects and obstacles in their area agendas. They assure us that all sexual preference is acceptable, that all imaginable forms of sexual expression are permissible and to be celebrated without consequences, except when it makes people upset. Well, people are getting upset, and as a consequence, their card castle is faltering. The age-old sexual anathema are reasserting themselves, arising from the liberal left as well as from the conservative right. The more society extracts sex not only from emotional intimacy and long-term relationship, but also from a procreative purpose, the less firm it is. Less firm is its false foundation. We have to relearn and reclaim the proprieties of sex. The rainbow flag is a reminder of that, and of how far we have descended into sexual freefall. He says Catholics should take a stand, therefore, a vocal yet charitable stand against the rainbow flag. Lodge well-worded complaints, write petitions, change your shopping habits, even if just for the month of June. Pray in public, adopt slogans of peaceful defiance. We have the numbers, and we should act in that confidence, even if we don't perceive our army. And if not that, we should act in confidence that the rainbow actually intended to bestow, the confidence that God will not relinquish us in the face of cultural collapse. And he will not. Love is love, I suppose, but that's not saying anything. It is saying something, however, that God is love. But the rainbow that flaps in doorways and arches over clothing and flashes on screens in our day and age is a warning instead of an assurance. As the old song goes, God gave Noah the rainbow sign, no more water, but fire next time. I would love to hear from you on this. I would love to see what you think when it comes to Pride Month and what it's all about and how it even relates to you. If you're a Christian, if you're a person of faith, if you're a Bible believing individual, I would, and even if you're not, I would love to hear your perspective on this and see, is this something that's actually starting to crumble? And it looks like it may be. And I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Of course, you can always do that. And in fact, we're on YouTube now as of the first of the year. We've been on YouTube and would love to have you go there, subscribe and like us and even share. And thank you for listening. This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.